Hello and welcome to the fourth day, because yesterday we had to reschedule the talk with Jackie, but today we have Rachel Anderson here with us. And I met her through a common group that we are. And I saw that her story was very, very impressive and very relatable. So I thought that it was very good to invite her to give us a talk about going from burnt out to really know yourself and start to let go of the things that weighs us down, and also to be more comfortable in your own skin. Sometimes that is very difficult because we seems to try to fit the mold of what other expects from us. And sometimes we need to start to know ourselves and being comfortable with who we are, to really be authentic and really show what we need or what we want, and do the things accordingly to that, and stop the burnt out and feeling that you are more than enough and you are the best of you, the best version of you, instead of trying to fit a mold that you are never going to be able to fit. So without more me talking, I will introduce you to Rachel Anderson. Hello and welcome.
Hi, Claudia. So thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to speaking to you all.
So there are many that are contacting me that this topic, it is very useful for them to know. So I would like to handle the microphone or the camera to you, and you can talk to us about your experience and the best way to go ahead, and what do you need actually to make that click in your head to start to make things happen in your own skin.
Absolutely.
So I leave you with the stage, and I'll see you later.
Thank you so much, Claudia. So, hello, if you're watching live or if you're catching afterwards. I'm Rachel Anderson, as it says on the screen. My company's Tea and Empathy. And I want to just talk to you today a little bit about my story. And I would never claim to be anything remarkable. I'm just like anybody else. I'm 53 years old. I'm a mum to 3. I've had my ups and my downs, but what I'm learning now, I don't think my life's ever felt so fulfilling. I've not experienced quite so much joy or ease or humour or laughter as I do right now, as I'm learning to become comfortable in my own skin. And that's not entirely by accident. There's a lot that I've learned along the way. So I wanted to share some of that journey. I'm hoping you won't pick up too many background noises. Of course, I have family around me, and as much as I say, could you be quiet while I'm going live, they still clatter around, but that's reality. And I think that's another important point that I'll bring back, that pretense is stressful, and pretense is what burns us out when we spend so much time trying to put a front on to cover up the reality of our lives. So I'm not going to pretend that everything is going to be quiet in my house while I'm doing this live. As I say, so I don't think I'm anything remarkable. I don't claim to have all the answers, but in sharing my journey, I hope you'll find some things that relate to it and some things that you may be able to take away about how we can grow into ourselves and be more of the person that we have the potential to be before we pick up all the baggage along the way. I don't have a big tragedy story. I don't have one of those things that really tugs at your heart. I had a very happy childhood. I was very fortunate to have a loving family, to feel really secure. I was very good at lots of things that I did at school. I was full of potential. I remember a headmaster once saying, oh, Rachel could do whatever she wanted to do. So I don't have any tragedy in that space. But of course, even every child will pick up stuff and learn lessons and pick up baggage, even with the happiest of childhoods. So I decided at quite a young age that actually what I wanted to do was be a forester. I love being outside in nature. I wanted to smash through some stereotypes. I wanted to show the world. I wanted to change the world. I was going to do all kinds of amazing things by becoming a forester. And so, being quite determined, that's what I did. I went to university and studied forestry. I met my husband there. It's occupational hazard of being a female forester that you end up with another forester. But I was excited to be breaking into this world, to be one of the very few women who were going into forestry. I had high hopes. I was seen as high potential. I was seen as talent. I got a job quite easily with the Forestry Commission, and I spent 18 years then with the Forestry Commission. I was looking very good. We got married quite young. We graduated. We got married all in the same year. Got a mortgage. And then about 3 years into my career, I started to hit some of the reality of what I was up against. I started to encounter some of the hidden misogyny. I started to hit some resistance from me just being me. I was in a management role and a leadership role, and I was struggling with how I was expected to behave towards other people. And then I started a job with a new boss. With hindsight, I can see he was struggling with all kinds of things himself, but I felt very bullied by him. I felt bullied in a way that consistently over a 4-year period, he eroded my self-esteem, or rather I allowed him to erode my self-esteem. And the more I felt like I wasn't doing anything right, the more alongside it, my husband's career seemed to be going very well. It seemed easy for him and hard for me, and nothing I did, despite that early promise, seemed to be quite be enough. So I went down and down and down, and I hated how I was for that. That wasn't my image for myself. I didn't know how I couldn't shake this off. I couldn't work it out. And I was quite angry about how people were treated. It seemed to me it was a very black and white world, of how people would be wrong or right. There didn't seem to be much compassion. I was struggling to get promoted. I seemed to go to job after job, and people would say, "Oh, Rachel's very good, but there's just something about her." So I was hitting a real glass ceiling. I think my doorbell's about to go, but somebody else will get it. So my husband was promoted, and that meant we had to move to Edinburgh. I took on a different job for a while. I did a secondment as a real civil servant for a while, and we were in the middle of moving house, and then my dad died quite suddenly. And yeah, my dad died. I was hit very hard by that. I started to feel really depressed. And then in the middle of that, I realised actually I was pregnant, and that wasn't planned either. So we were in between houses. My career seemed to be stalled. My father had just died, and I had an unexpected pregnancy. And it all seemed really rather hard to deal with. And I struggled for a long time. While I was on maternity leave, then somebody from the Forestry Commission, who didn't really know what to do with me in my career anymore, said, "We've got this project coming up about harmonising pay and conditions of service across the whole of the Forestry Commission. Why don't you be part of the project to bring that into being?" I think they couldn't find somebody else to do it, but I had forestry knowledge. I was interested in people. It seemed like an ideal solution. Now that project was the start of changing everything for me, because for the first time I was able to stay in a place where I could see people for being people. What we had in forestry is the guys in the woods, and they were mostly men, who were on weekly piecework rate, and then the rest and paid very much to work, not to think. And then we had everybody else who were on civil service contracts. It was like having a whole group of people whose whole potential and what they had to bring was put into a very small box. So I loved being able to bring all of that together, to look at the possibility, to see people as human beings and their value no matter where they were in the organisation, all the possibility and the potential. And I just loved that. I just loved that. It unlocked something in me in seeing how we can help people grow rather than just helping trees grow. Just became, it was an eye-opener. It was revolutionary. I started to understand what happens when we nourish and look after people, how they can flourish and grow, rather than as being hard on them or feeling like we have to control them. And I was wondering why I wasn't giving myself that too. So we had this huge cultural change in the organisation. It was very exciting. And then we had restructuring, a change of senior leaders. The jobs all started to disappear. It felt like we were going backwards. I felt like I was back to square one. I was, again, with what I see with hindsight, hit another period of depression and feeling guilty, because what did I really have anything to be guilty about? And also by this time, I now had 3 daughters. I had a young family. I was working remotely. My team were remote, kind of 200 miles away. I was traveling a lot. My husband was traveling a lot. We were juggling 3 young daughters. I didn't feel like I was doing anything very well. And again, I was despising myself for that. How come I couldn't get it together? How come I was still not being a success? How come I wasn't being the mum I wanted to be? How come I wasn't being the person I wanted to be? How come I wasn't having the career I wanted? And I went down and down and down. And by this time I was in learning and development. I didn't feel like I was giving that. I just felt like an imposter. I felt I didn't know what I was doing. And I got to a point where it was just got myself in such a spiral that I was just crying all the time. I became completely burnt out. And again, I was so ashamed. How could I be in this state? How could I, this sparkling, full of possibility, potential, with such a happy childhood and a lovely family and all this security, be in such a mess? I was ashamed and mortified. And I can't remember exactly what the tipping point was, but I can remember me sitting there thinking, I think I might need some help. I think I can't sort this by myself. And I picked up the phone, called the doctor, who was wonderful, and said, I'm going to sign you off for a week. And I said, you can't sign me off. I've got all these things to do. If I could just stop crying, I'll be fine. He said, no, I'm signing you off. The world won't end. Go and just take a week and rest. And I thought, I'm not going to rest. I've got to sort things out. I've got to have a plan. I've got to be able to pull myself out of this. So I did spend time thinking about what I was going to do. But I took a step back and I got a lot of books. I found out about coaching. I'd never heard about coaching. And I reached out to get a coach. Now that really was the beginning of everything changing. I worked with somebody who helped me to see how, yes, it wasn't my fault, but also how I was getting in my own way, how I was blaming so many external factors and not looking at how I was perpetuating patterns. Somebody to help me step back and realise it was very hard juggling everything that I was juggling. And really, I wanted the freedom and flexibility to be my own boss. And that allowed me to think about imagining the impossible, what seemed to be impossible, which was leaving my steady job. My husband was very supportive. I didn't know what I was going to do. I started looking at jewellery franchises, something creative. I looked at all kinds of different business ideas. And then purely by accident, because I've been picking up more and more coaching skills, I bumped into somebody who knew that I was able to now coach myself and said, why don't you come and do some coaching for us? We're expanding as a coaching organisation. Come and do some coaching. So I dropped my hours with the Forestry Commission so I could take on a little bit of freelance coaching, started to coach other people, found it just wonderful in being able to hold that space for other people, and found that I was quite good at it. I thought, well, that's what I'm going to do. So I left and set up my own business. It would be nice to say that everything was plain sailing from that. That was 13 years ago now. The advantage of being a coach is in holding space for other people. You have a lot of time and reflection back for seeing your own stuff too. So as I started to work with some incredibly inspiring leaders on a one-to-one basis in amazing companies right away across the world, I started to see patterns about how we as human beings get ourselves in a real mess. How actually it's now been about 1,000 people on a one-to-one basis that I've worked with, from CEOs, C-suite leaders, incredible entrepreneurs, right the way through organisations, of knowing that no matter how outwardly successful people may be, internally, there is still that doubt that they're not enough, that they'll be found out. I started to realise how I'd been thinking about myself, thinking there was something wrong with me, thinking I needed to be ashamed of who I was because I felt such a fraud and in a mess. Actually is a very common human experience. I started to realise just how universal it is and how we compare our insides to other people's outsides. The coaching also, of course, gave me access to huge amounts of different approaches, all these different writers and coaching approaches and insights and therapies, and I learned so much from so many different things. I read so many books, I still read them. I went on so many courses. I learned so much. I still had that nagging doubt that I wasn't enough, that I was missing something, and there are still days when I do. It is part of being human. But what I then found was, having left forestry, of course, I'd learnt a lot from nature as well. So I use metaphor and nature to help me on my own journey now. And I use metaphor and nature to help other people too. Because we tend to treat ourselves like machines, like we should be always on, we should be steady. We have an expectation like we're a machine, but we're not. We're organic beings. We have our cycles and our seasons. We ebb and we flow. We're not steady state, and we need a minimum input in order to have any kind of output, yet we deny ourselves that. The other thing I know from nature, if you plant a tree in a harsh environment, it will survive and it will grow, but it won't grow into all that it has the potential to be. It will do the best it can in the environment that it's in, but it will be stunted. It won't be flourishing. It'll just be surviving and growing slowly. But if you plant a tree in a nourishing environment, then you can see what it grows into being. So we tend to think that we mustn't let ourselves off the hook, that we need to be hard with ourselves. Everything has to be hard work. And we create a very harsh, critical, internal environment for ourselves. And that stunts us. We're not able to grow into all that we're able to be because of how harsh an internal environment, no matter what the external environment, our internal environment becomes so harsh. We're so hard on ourselves. We're so critical. We beat ourselves up and we keep ourselves stunted and small. It's very easy to say we need to have self-compassion, but we've learned to be hard on ourselves throughout our whole life. We need to unlearn. We need to unlearn first before we can learn how to love ourselves. And notice how uncomfortable it can feel to even say that we love ourselves. We're taught somehow that that's wrong, narcissistic, but that's not what we're talking about. So I use the acronym of OAK, because I'm an ex-forester. I love trees. The O is for ownership. What I was doing when I was in the Forestry Commission, when I was feeling bullied, it actually, with hindsight, I was creating a lot of story around that. I was allowing that man to make me feel in the way that I was feeling. I let him through, and I was blaming him. Now, I don't believe his behaviour was good, but neither was I taking responsibility for myself. I was blaming everything else. I was not taking ownership. We can't control what happens to us. We can't control other people, but there is one thing that we can always control, and that is how we choose to respond to whatever happens. We might not like our choices, but we still have a choice. It's up to us, and only us, how we respond. And that's so liberating to understand it. I'm a bit of a control freak, always have been, a perfectionist. And it's frustrating when the world isn't how we want it to be, and we're not how we want to be. But actually, there's so much that's not in my control. It's very liberating to focus on what is in my control. Is okay, that is how it is. How am I going to respond? And that's down to me and nobody else. I can't abdicate or give away all my power and responsibility. I need to take ownership. So the O is for ownership. And then along with that, the A is acceptance. That is that it is how it is right now. I am who I am right now. No amount of wishful thinking or fantasizing that it should somehow be other is going to change anything. We lose a lot of energy and get distracted in that gap between the reality of how it is and our fantasy of how it should be. And we just get really frustrated about that. But actually, that's not changing anything. Let's just, okay, we're here. Right. And in that acceptance, we release so much more energy to then be able to start moving forward. The answers aren't out there. The answer is right here, right now. Let's accept this. Doesn't mean to say we want it to stay that way. Doesn't mean to say that we agree or condone with the conditions that are there. But it is reality. Let's accept it. And then the K, well, that's for kindness. That's the piece that would make so much difference in the world. More kindness. And again, we tend to think about it being external kindness, being kind to other people, which of course matters. And not as much as being kind to ourselves. That actually we find it so much easier to be compassionate towards other people, yet we won't give ourselves the same treatment. But when we move to a place of this radical self-acceptance, when we are able to see that we are all light and we are all shadows, no one is all good or all bad, that we all have the same things, and that there is no shame in that, when we can hold ourselves lightly and know that this is who I am right now. I would like to be something else, but this is who I am right now. I'm here through a whole range of circumstances, all my life experiences and all the things that I've been learned often from being a very small child have contributed to this. So it's understandable. Let's be kind. When we accept it and understand it, then actually we can't help but grow and move on. It's been my biggest single life lesson over the last probably 3 years, probably since turning 50, that the joy that comes in that letting go and in the kindness and the understanding that who I am right now is enough. It's enough. There is no shame in it. Has opened up more than I could imagine. I don't need to strive for goals or get to something there. I don't need to keep pushing myself in order to grow. No, the answer to my growth is in being who I am right now and exploring deeper and deeper inside. I can spend a lot of time fantasizing about who I might be without fully knowing who I am right now. So all my programs and the work that I do, I have a lovely program called What's Inside, which works with metaphor and all the senses to go really deep and access the more unconscious side of exploring how we react, what things come up to us, what unconsciously has influence on us right now. What do we not really know about the person we are just now? When we do that self-discovery of now, then we keep growing. Whereas if we're not prepared to look at who we are now, all our light and all our shadows, and be ready to own that, then we've got our eyes on the wrong thing, and we'll perpetually be disappointing ourselves, not living up to our own expectations. And in that observation and the noticing of who we are, noticing what impacts us, we start to notice much more. We start to notice other people. We start to see the patterns that play out. We become able to become an observer as well as enjoying being in the moment. So we get less hooked by the stories or the dynamics. We see things more clearly for what they are. And then that helps us to let go. So I can see when somebody's being rude or difficult with me. I can see past that and understand what may be causing it, and know that although it might feel personal, actually it's not about me. It'll be projection onto me. So I can separate out better what's my stuff, what may be somebody else's stuff. I'm pausing there for a moment. I've not seen comments coming in. I don't know if there are any comments coming in. You're on mute, Claudia.
I'm going to jump in because I find that this is so fascinating, actually, to be honest. We have someone, 2 people watching. They haven't made any comments, but I think, it's so true. And you can relate to the story. I haven't lived the same as you, the same path. But I've crossed the same stages. I've crossed the stage that feeling that I have to keep going and keep doing things, and I cannot stop because I have to feel the shoes of someone else, and other person is expecting this from me, and not thinking in myself. I'm thinking about the rest and pleasing others. Right. And that is one thing that I've seen too many times, actually, in my clients as well. I coach in a different style and a different area of you, but it's the same thing. Yes. But what strikes me and what frustrates me a little bit, it is that they ask, or we ask for help when you are more than in the bottom, you are further down of the bottom.
Yes.
So why not try to recognize in early stage that you need help? Because that way you need less work, you need less time, you heal faster, or you grow faster. It's like transplanting the early stage of a plant,
yes,
to a better soil. Because if you keep it on that tiny pot, it's not going to grow, it's not going to get bigger. So you need to do it at a certain time, but not when the plant is like very sad. Doing that analogy.
And I've wrestled with this with many years because I've seen it over and over again, exactly as you say, with clients. And of course, it's not enough to know something. We have to be something. And sadly, I do think there is a piece of, it's not until people actually experience a sense of it that they can really understand it. Your understanding is different from knowing. So we hear all these things that people talk about in personal development world, and all the coaching advice that there is, but until we experience it and feel it ourselves, because it's us that makes it's us that makes the neurological connection, and no one can do that for us. What I think is important is that as people start to feel the first signs of that, rather than it getting so bad, that they then have the courage to reach out, and that we do talk openly. Because what also stops people reaching out is they still have that sense that it's just them, that somehow there's something to be ashamed of. They don't want to admit to themselves that they're in that place. And often, it's the brightest and the best often who will get themselves into the biggest mess. Themselves into the biggest mess.
That is true. So yeah, I love the metaphor of oak, and I learned something new. Not something new, but I relearned something.
And I think it's so important as we go on our journeys, because you just said, your journey is not my journey. Everybody's journey is unique, and that's also why it's really important that you find the person to work with who resonates for you. It's I always know in my coaching here, it's important to see if the rapport is there, because you hear one person's voice and you can't hear, they might be talking about the same thing, but they talk about it in a different way. So we all hear different voices in different ways. So the people who work with you, Claudia, even though we were talking, you come from one approach, I come from a different approach, and all the coaches out there, there's a unique approach, but it's the voice that you're able to hear that's the one that matters. And it may be different voices at different times. I've worked with a number of different coaches myself over the years, and I still have a coach. I mean, coaches have coaches, because we think we should be able to sort this out ourselves. Our stubborn pride and our sense of shame is, I know all this, I should be able to sort it out. But of course, we can't see the end of our nose or the back of our head without a mirror. When you're in it, it's so hard to see it. It's why it's so easy to see what we think other people should do and get frustrated that they don't seem to be able to do it themselves. When you're in it, it's not so easy to see it. You need someone to be able to hold a non-judgmental, safe space to be able to reflect it back, so you can see yourself clearly. If I look in the mirror, it's like, oh, that's what the end of my nose looks like. I imagine the end of my nose, but I can't actually see it. Even if I go across it, I can't see the end of my nose. And similarly, it's like, I have no idea what the back of my hair is looking like at the moment, because I need a set up of mirrors to be able to see that. And it's the same when we are in our emotional and in our own emotional state. I think also we think that we can sort it out cognitively. We over-index on how we think about what rationally makes sense. We think we can think our way out of something, but actually it's our whole neurology that's being impacted. It's not just the way that we're thinking, it's about our emotions, it's about our body, it's about using the data from all of that. When we use language like listening to our gut or our heart, it's for a reason. It's because there's more, there's more neurological activity in those parts than there is in your brain. So it's your whole experience, and again, and that's why in What's Inside I use all the senses to explore that. When I send a box out each month, and we explore taste and smell and sound and touch, and explore the metaphors of what that means. And it allows us to access information about who we are and where we are that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. The stuff that we just overlook, but actually gives us all the data. I shared a cartoon in my Facebook group the other day. I think the cartoonist is called Brian Gordon. I can't remember his website, but you may have seen it. But it's a great cartoon that he put up for about when he sends his kids to find something, and they come out saying, "I can't find it anywhere. It's just gone," and it's right there under the nose.
Well, that happened to me every single time with my voice.
That's absolutely all the time. We all know it. It's like, I can't find it. I've looked everywhere. You mean you're looking for this? Yeah, it's that. But it's the same. The same thing follows through for us. We seek the answers out there. The answer which is going to magically fix me, and everything will suddenly become clear and easy forevermore. It's out there somewhere, and we forget to look here. What's right under our nose? Our answers are here, and we have everything we need. We just may not be accessing it or knowing what to do with it.
Yeah, and the fact sometimes that we need to understand that we need to let go things, that we cannot control everything, and we cannot be all the time overwhelmed because we cannot control things.
Absolutely.
So I've learned that also the hard way when my youngest son born with a rare condition that was living in the hospital for weeks at the time, and then juggling family and the other boys, and I struck a time that I say, if I go this rhythm, I'm going to die.
Yes.
And I'm not going to serve anyone if I'm dead. So I have to stop, and I have to let go things that are really not important or I cannot control, and I cannot fight anymore those battles. So pick the strong battles that you know that you can do something, and control the things that you can control, not sweating for the things that you cannot control.
I think it's when we have something, I find that unimaginable, Claudia, the situation you found yourself in. But when we have those big experiences in life, which are huge perspective-giving heat moments where actually we almost feel like we have no choice but to change, and so we shift. We have those big realizations. It's like when we have faced a bereavement. I know I had a huge amount of change and growth, both after my dad died and after my mum died, and 6 years ago I broke my leg. The frustration of being that immobile, and I was like, it was a skiing accident. I was lying there on the slopes, but I had a moment of absolute pure clarity, because there was nothing I could do except let people take care of me in that moment. And so it almost felt like an epiphany, because it's those big things where it's like, I clearly see what I can control and what I can't control, and so everything's going to have to change in this moment. It's actually almost harder in our humdrum day-to-day life to realise and let go of what we can't control, because we think there's no excuse. We push ourselves, and I should be able to do these things. It's just little stuff. I'm not dealing with anything big. Why can't I sort things out? We actually are harder with ourselves in those circumstances, and it's it's like managing our state. I know during the period of time when my mum was dying, I probably felt calmer and clearer and able to access joy more easily, because I was very much in the moment and knowing how I want it to be. Yet, if I walk into one of my daughter's messy bedrooms, much harder to control.
I don't care anymore.
The person I want to be.
I don't care anymore. I say, this is your problem. It's not mine. Keep it the things, not smelly, no paper, not rubbish. That's fine. But I'm not, if they don't do their bed, I do not care. They sleep there. I'm not. So I stop to sweat the small things. And I start to enjoy life and quality time with them as well. Because what is the point to stress doing something that you don't enjoy, when some things for free, going for a walk or going to the beach or things like that, are more enjoyable, and you get better memories than trying to fit activities that you are running from place to place and everything, and they don't enjoy it and you don't enjoy it.
Absolutely. We get caught in those stories that we've created about how something should be. We get caught in that fantasy. Whereas if we, it's unlikely it will not be triggered, that we won't have that immediate response, but we can connect to actually what really matters here to me, and that's where if I walk into a messy bedroom, it's like I'll have that moment of irritation, but then it's the kind of actually what matters to me here. What matters is that they're happy, that they're safe, that actually there's around respect, and I need to respect their space too, and so in that it becomes something different.
Yeah, and I think this whole coronavirus thing has had its positives in people, because many had to stop doing many things, and they realized that they didn't need to be doing all those stuff.
Yes.
And they can pause, and they can walk, and they can enjoy what is around, and not spending money they don't have sometimes, because they have to go out for meals or whatever. So sometimes simplicity is the key.
Absolutely.
And you can enjoy it, and then you are going to look back and say, I really enjoyed that time. Or yeah, for some have hit very hard, I know, but that also triggers how you can pivot and how you can do the things different to see the opportunities. So I think in a way, this earthquake that all the society have lived, and many things of other society issues have triggered opportunities and see the things differently.
Very much
in
so.
my opinion.
It's in that kind of, you say you called it an earthquake, that quake. It's an opportunity to wake up and see all the things that we make up, all the stories that we just accept as being true about how we should live our lives, what should matter to us, all those things, all the things that we just unconsciously accept. In a moment like this, it gives us a chance to wake up and look at it and question it. Now, that's not easy to do. It takes courage, because actually what you're doing is, for some people, that becomes very scary, because in questioning the way you've been living all your life, it implies that somehow we've been wrong. Of course, we've not been wrong. We've just maybe not been awake. And so many people will choose not to see, and to go back, to scramble to get back to the way things were, because it's easier to not see. But if you want the opportunity to think, actually, a lot of this we're just making up. It's making up about how we educate our children, how businesses should operate, how we have social structures, how we should be with people, what we should prioritize. All those things are up for question. Now, we're not right or wrong for the decisions that we make.
No.
But it's important that we ask ourselves the questions and decide what's important for us, and rather than just continue unconsciously. And again, there's a parallel. The experience that you had, these small things that I've had, those moments that give you clarity, that wake us up to a different way of being, and is able to make different choices. We can use them.
Totally. So thank you very much for joining me today. And
Thank you very much for asking me and for having me. And it's been lovely to talk to you. And I'm just so glad to have made the connection as well, Claudia.
Yeah, of course. And I will pop Rachel's links on the comments. So, and any question, not now, or if you have any question, you can reach her or reach me through DMs or email, and we are happy to help people. So it has been a pleasure, and I'm going to say goodbye to Rachel. And tomorrow we are going to have Helena doing a vision board workshop to understand how we can support our goals through vision experience. I think it is a very useful tool because it's a visual reminder of what you want to do in your life or what you want to achieve further on. So don't miss out. It's tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and after that, I'm going to finish the week. So I hope you enjoy it, and any comment, please leave it on the comment section. So I'll see you around. Bye bye.